Hey, Joe Bob Briggs with a night of dead bodies galore here at the world-famous Monstervision. Tonight we have one of the great thrillers of the late 70s, Michael Crichton's Coma. And later we'll be showing Waxwork, Killer Wax Dummies. Actually, let's not dwell on that one, but I have a question. How come when you buy coffee in a plastic cup, they always put this lid on it? Even if you're not going anywhere. Even if you're going to drink the coffee 5 seconds from now, are they afraid you're going to spill coffee out of the cup as you're carefully negotiating the 1 foot from the counter to your mouth? Do they think you're wearing a really swell shirt today and they want to protect that shirt? And what happens when you pop the lid off to get at your coffee? It sloshes some coffee on you. What's the deal with the plastic lids? In fact, what's the deal with wrapping everything up? I don't want everything wrapped up. I'm not buying this stuff for my dog, you know what I mean? You know how grocery stores all have these purple neon deli counters now with guys named Stewart wearing checkered smocks and selling Genoa salami? You can't buy salami anymore. They say, will that be Genoa salami? I don't know where the salami comes from. I'll take Newark, New Jersey salami, okay? Yeah. Anyhow, I was in one of these places buying $9 worth of pasta salad, which used to be called macaroni. You know, $9 is about 3 dog bites. And the guy puts it in one of those plastic containers, the ones with a hinge that pops open and smears mayonnaise on your chin. But then he also wraps that container in cellophane. And then I noticed that inside the plastic container, which is inside the cellophane wrap, there is a pickle, and the pickle is wrapped up. He gives me a fork. The fork is wrapped up in a little plastic package, and there's a napkin inside the package with the fork. Then when I pay for it, what does he say? Paper or plastic, right? We're talking 300 square feet of paper and plastic products here to contain 3 bites of macaroni. Is this getting through to you? I'm afraid to open it up because if I do, I'll have to take out the garbage. I don't have enough space in my garbage can for this paper. And in fact, since my garbage can is also lined with plastic, think about it. We've got millions of people tying up little plastic thingies around an expensive plastic bag that contains thousands of other plastic bags, all being carted to a landfill that has no garbage in it. Only the paper that once contained the garbage. Are you following this? It's kind of metaphysical when you think about it. Don't think about it too much, though, because it is just totally scary. But you know what? I'm just going to calm down. Because tonight, to celebrate the cast of ER appearing on our beloved network, we have Coma. Yeah. Written and directed by the creator of ER, Michael Crichton. He wrote the screenplay, actually. Robin Cook wrote the original book. But it stars Geneviève Bujold and her big brown eyes as a doctor who discovers hanky-panky going on at her big Boston hospital, and also Michael Douglas as the befuddled boyfriend, and Richard Widmark and Rip Torn as the surgical bigwigs. So let's do the drive-in totals and then get it started. We have 77 dead bodies, 8 breaths, 2 living, 6 dead, and all either hacked out or fuzzed over, brain slicing, kidney weighing, vegetable hanging, organ donating, plastic-covered peni, death by electrocution, gratuitous New England antiquing, fire extinguisher foo, cadaver foo, 4 stars. This is an honest-to-goodness 70s classic, so let's get to it. And here's a little quote from Michael Crichton to start you off. This is the first line of Michael Crichton's autobiography. It is not easy to cut through a human head with a hacksaw. My kind of guy.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Coma on TNT.
Nice Dan-skin leotard action on Lois Childs, the foxy best friend who has to go in for a therapeutic abortion and ends up as basically a rutabaga. Lois is still around, though, still working. I just saw her the other night on cable in Speed 2 Cruise Control. That movie's on every time you turn on the dang TV, isn't it? They always have a little chroma key readout on the sides. Yeah. See it again at 4:20, 8:15, midnight, just in case I wanted to study its structure for my film school graduate thesis. Anyway, Lois Childs was also in broadcast news as the hot-to-trot anchorwoman. Okay, let's get back to the movie. I hope that little bleep, bleep, bleep noise doesn't go on for the whole thing, or I'm going to go into a coma myself. Anyway, go. This is one of those rare movies that's better than the book. The book was pretty trashy. but Michael Crichton kind of classed it up. I'll give you a little smidgen of what you get in the novel. Listen to this. The tuna sandwich, as bad as it was, had long since disappeared into her metabolic mill, and Susan looked forward to dinner. Let me read that again. The tuna sandwich, as bad as it was, had long since disappeared into her metabolic mill, and Susan looked forward to dinner. Doctor, we have a tumorous metaphor on page 58. I think we need to operate immediately. Could be fatal.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Coma on TNT.
Tom Selleck as a good-natured knee surgery patient, 15th billing. You'll notice a lot of famous names turning up in small roles in this flick. Michael Crichton, the writer-director of Coma, was a real whiz kid. Sold his first story to the New York Times when he was 14 years old, and now he's got to be one of the richest guys in Hollywood. First of all, he writes big-time bestseller novels. There are 100 million copies of his books in print. His first book was The Andromeda Strain, and after that he wrote a book called Dealing, or The Berkeley to Boston 40-Brick Lost Bag Blues, under the pen name of Michael Douglas. I think that was a coincidence, even though Michael Douglas had already started his acting career at that point. The book came out in '72 when Michael Douglas was doing The Streets of San Francisco, so I don't know, maybe they knew each other. Anyhow, Michael Crichton also wrote the novels that a bunch of big-budget movies have been based on, like Jurassic Park, Rising Sun, Disclosure, starring Michael Douglas again to make things even more confusing, and, of course, Sphere. And there's 2 movies based on his books coming out next year. Airframe and The 13th Warrior, based on Eaters of the Dead. You know about that? That's about these 15th century guys who killed the Vikings and ate them. Whoa. Of course, by the 15th century, the Vikings were getting a little moldy. You know, starting to open Swedish furniture studios and drink a little too much Gevalia coffee, right? So it wasn't exactly like killing wild boars or anything. You know, hey, Sven, look over here. Bang, he's dead. Anyway, Michael Crichton doesn't direct too much anymore, but his first feature was the awesome Westworld, which I think was a pretty groundbreaking movie at the time. And he wrote the script for that, too. And he has a great track record. The only real turkey I can remember is Looker. That thing was a flopola. But then he created the gigantically successful show ER, because wouldn't you know it, he went to Harvard Medical School. And that was after he gave up studying English at Harvard, because he turned in an essay written by George Orwell, and he only got a B on it. Well, if he hadn't been slacking off turning in somebody else's work, maybe he wouldn't be such an underachiever, you know what I mean? Okay, let's get back to the flick. Roll it. Oh, Michael Crichton. He's 6'9". In other words, he is a full foot taller than Michael Douglas. And he's a 1.5 feet taller than Geneviève Bujold. And he also made a movie with Dustin Hoffman. So let's see, if Michael Crichton is 6'9", that would make him 2 feet, no, that would make him 4 feet 9 inches taller than Dustin Hoffman. They made Sphere together. I'm kidding. No, that's wrong. 3 feet 9 inches taller than Dustin. When Dustin wears his platform pimp shoes like Superfly.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Coma on TNT.
That was comedian Rip Torn as the chief of anesthesiology in those wire-rim glasses. Rip looks different in every role he plays. He's most recently getting attention for the Larry Sanders Show. He's kind of gotten all big and goofy the last couple of years, but he's had a pretty serious career. He's done more than 100 movies and TV shows, but he's really just a good old boy from Temple, Texas. Real name is Elmore. He's Sissy Spacek's cousin. They're just a whole family of good Texas people. And that's Richard Widmark as Dr. Harris, the guy in the penthouse office who chews out Geneviève Bujold. And that guy, that's a legend. He's been working since 1947, lots of westerns, lots of war movies, lots of old black and white gangster flicks. And I don't know what his most famous movie is, probably How the West Was Won. That was a biggie. Or Don't Bother to Knock. He made that with Marilyn Monroe. No Way Out was pretty big. Not the one Kevin Costner did with that limo sex scene, but the good one, the real one from 1950. And, of course, he played himself in one of the great California episodes of I Love Lucy, where Lucy tries to steal the grapefruit off his tree. Okay, let's go back to Coma. Roll it. I never really watch I Love Lucy, and yet I feel I've seen every episode. I Love Lucy seeps into your brain by osmosis. You can't avoid it. You can try not to watch it, and God will hotwire your brain and show you every episode. You start to feel it physically, you know. You can identify with the hunger pangs of Fred Mertz. Women start developing those whiny nasal Ethel voices, you know. See, Nick at Night is responsible. Nick at Night started all this stuff. You're much better off watching Monstervision.
Oh, yeah.
Hick at Night.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Coma on TNT.
Was that Sly Stallone standing on the street staring at Geneviève? Could be. After all, there was poor old Ed Harris grabbing 42nd billing as the quirky pathology resident. Anyhow, nice brain slicing scene, even though the TNT censors did a little slicing of their own. I didn't even mention earlier that there was a full minute of close-up surgery taken out of the opening sequence of the movie. Now, ask me if I'm happy about that. Hell, you can see that stuff on the Learning Channel.
Yeah.
Also, was that a deli-style meat slicer they used for that brain sectioning scene? I assume that's the authentic implement, because Michael Crichton did go to med school. Okay. We haven't talked about Geneviève Bujold yet. I always thought she was French, but she's actually from Montreal, Canada. She's got this really subtle accent that she's never quite shaken, because she's from that part of Canada where if you don't speak French, they throw you in jail and hit you over the head with a croissant or something. Anyway, Geneviève did go to Paris and started doing French films, but then she got into the good stuff like Earthquake and Monsignor with Christopher Reeve as a naughty priest, and that Clint Eastwood tennis shoe serial killer movie, Tightrope. And she got the part of the captain in the Star Trek Voyager series, but she gave it up after one day of filming. You ought to be sure of yourself to walk out of a job like that. But this is it. Coma, I think, is easily her best flick, so let's get back to it. Geneviève Bujold went to school in a convent, but she got kicked out when they caught her reading a forbidden novel. And I kind of feel a bond with Geneviève over that, because I also got kicked out of a convent one time.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Coma on TNT.
Well, somebody forgot to give screaming lessons to Geneviève Bujold, didn't they? That was the most pitiful scream I've ever heard. And did we really need that syrupy love montage of beach frolicking and dock walking and cocktail sipping? Was that necessary? Michael Douglas in the thankless role of the boyfriend, doing a pretty dang good job. Michael is one of the few sons of a famous star who became equally famous, and some think more famous, although I think Kirk Douglas has a few more blockbusters. But Michael kind of sidled into the business in a weird way by producing movies. He produced One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He bought the rights to the novel so that his dad, Kirk Douglas, could star in it. But by the time they got around to making the movie, Kirk was too old, so they got Jack Nicholson instead. And then it won a bunch of Oscars, including Best Actor. How happy do you think Kirk was when that happened? Anyway, Jack Nicholson also got a pretty famous role that Rip Torn was up for, the lawyer in Easy Rider. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, Michael Douglas is continuing to produce a lot of movies. He was executive producer on Face Off. Did you guys see Face Off?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's some excellent acting in that movie. You should check that movie out. By the way, what's the story with that evil coma nurse? The one played by Elizabeth Ashley. Is she in a coma herself or what? What's going on there? And that's enough. And I was going to have the mail girl bring a letter out, but I think I yacked enough. So let's save her for the next break. Yeah. And guys, keep an eye open during this next part. There's a point where you can see right up Geneviève Bujold's himina homina, you know. Back to Coma. Michael Douglas is also famous for his bare-naked hiney, you know. Was he the first guy to start doing that? He started that trend of being bare-naked in bed. His Basic Instinct, Fatal Attraction, Disclosure. What's the total Michael Douglas hiney count? It's way up there. We didn't have that in this movie. This was his pre-Butoc period.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Coma on TNT.
Okay, in the great wisdom of the TNT editors, we're taking a break right in the middle of the big scary chase scene where Geneviève Bujold runs around without her pantyhose because she had to take them off at the top of the secret shaft. But I know you'll think the delay is worth it when you see what the luscious TNT mail girl has on for us tonight. Whoa, are you sure you can breathe in that, honey?
Yes, it's stretch fabric. I can breathe.
Well, if you have any trouble, you just say the word and I'll escort you to my dressing room and take care of things.
Well, I think I'm okay.
I can also apply cold chest compresses if that would help you at all.
Well, you could just rip it off entirely so my skin could breathe.
Yes, I could.
Does it feel like I'm coming on to you, Joe Bob?
Strangely enough, it does.
Well, actually, I'm just toying with you for my own amusement. Why don't we go ahead and read this letter, then? It's from Michael Talent of Tiburon, California.
Dear Joe Bob, here I sit watching The Legend of Boggy Creek and loving every minute of it. You're a man of discriminating taste, Michael. Loving every minute of it, especially your commentary, and then the mail girl came. Lovely as she is, I was struck suddenly with overwhelming nausea when she said Bill Clinton was cute. Has anyone ever told her about the invention of eyeglasses, contacts, binoculars? Help! Get the poor girl to a doctor, fast. Not only is he not cute with his W.C. Fields nose, gargantuan overbite, and habit of talking with his teeth instead of his lips, ick. His incredibly stupid remarks every time he opens his mouth have prompted me to send you this voice wave. Insert Clinton where they say Madison. I'm a great fan of yours. You always end my day with a smile. Must get back to this hair-raising experience. Michael Talent, Tiburon, California. I'm not sure when we last showed The Legend of Boggy Creek, but I don't think Reno was here then. Were you, Reno?
No, I wasn't.
But I'm going to bet that you probably think Bill Clinton is cute, too. A lot of women think he's cute. I'm not talking about when he opens his mouth, just on a purely physical level, right?
Well, yes. I mean, I think he's a pretty good-looking man with silver hair, and he has a certain appeal because he's, you know, a president.
Where are you from, Reno?
From Petoskey, Michigan.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What did your last boyfriend look like?
Ernie? Oh, gosh. He was about 5'10" and 180 pounds.
180. Was that muscle or paunch?
Well, I'd like to call them love handles.
Uh-huh. And what does your daddy look like?
Well, I guess he likes a beer or two once in a while, so he looks about the same.
And he's got a little alcoholic pit face going, maybe?
Well, no, that's not a nice way of putting it.
Is he missing any teeth?
Well, maybe one or two.
How about limbs? Is he missing any limbs? Any limbs
Well,
missing?
he's a veteran, okay, Joe Bob? I mean, he got a medal for it.
Okay, I got it. See, Michael, you got to understand, the male girls are country gals. They occasionally put up with little physical flaws. Seen in context, Bill is a major hunk. But thanks for the kind words about the show, and we got to get back to Coma now. And a special message for our loyal Monstervision fans watching from prison tonight. When you see a game of cadaver dominoes, look for a couple of breasts.
Oh.
They're in there. Roll it. At one time, Al Gore had a reputation for hunkamania himself.
Hunkamania.
Al Gore.
I know. I like Al Gore.
Did you ever see those picture postcards they sell in Greenwich Village? Bill Clinton and Al Gore with their arms around each other, and they have these oiled-up bodybuilder torsos. They're funny.
No. But, I mean...
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Coma on TNT.
Those hanging Coma people are awesome, aren't they? Yeah. I think those are real people. It's obvious that the dead bodies in the anatomy lab, those were fake. The ones hung up on the meat hooks and the garment bags. But these are way too lifelike to be mannequins. Even 20 years later, I don't think anybody's been able to make a convincing, fresh, dead body that isn't some actor lying there holding his breath. But I wasn't real crazy about the big fuzzy spot covering that girl's hooters, though. What do they think, that some impressionable kid is going to get turned on by that and want to have sex with a corpse on the internet or something? And that creepy Nurse Ratched, what a delight she is. That's Elizabeth Ashley, very intimidating in her 1970s Billie Jean King glasses. Okay, that last part went by pretty fast, so let's go ahead and get back to the movie. Go. And this next bit has just fuzzy hooters galore. I guess they decided to have unisex topless pajamas at the Jefferson Institute. Give the guards a little incentive to do the old walk-around 20 times a day. Put a little sunshine in the demanding job of vegetable security.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Coma on TNT.
You know, I know Michael Crichton is supposed to be a great writer and everything, but don't you think the old bumbling security guard thing is a little beneath him? You know where they're supposed to be watching the video monitors, but they're fighting over why tonight's sandwiches aren't any good? I mean, don't they tell you in Film School 101, never ever write a scene like that? All right, couple of questions. First, if you were Geneviève Bujold and you had just ridden out of an evil suburban murder facility on top of an ambulance, would you go back to the hospital where they're initiating the murders and where there's some crazed psycho who was just yesterday chasing you around with a gun trying to kill you? Wouldn't you go to the police? To like the hospital homicide department or something? You know, hi, I'm a doctor at such and such a hospital. Here's my credentials. Here's a list of people who've been killed. I'll be over here at the Holiday Inn. I would not be having a cocktail with Richard Widmark alone in his office. Question numero 20. There in the scene we just watched, she looks up at the diplomas on Richard Widmark's wall, and it says Dr. George Harris, and she says, "Oh, you're Dr. George." But didn't we already meet Dr. George about 5 commercial breaks ago? And wasn't Rip Torn Dr. George? And in fact, doesn't it say in the credits of the movie that Rip Torn's character is Dr. George? So the whole plot depends on this very subtle difference between people saying George, meaning Richard Widmark, and her not understanding that that's who they mean, and Dr. George, meaning the guy in anesthesiology, and we're supposed to think, oh, what a coinkadinky. In other words, haven't they done a monstrous trick to us here that's against Aristotle's rules of poetics, especially the part involving medical malpractice? You know, I don't want to make a big deal about it, but I've already made a big deal about it. So, okay, let's watch the thrilling conclusion to the classic Coma. Roll it. Can anybody tell me what the appendix really does and why it can spontaneously explode and kill a person? I know that's not what's really going on here, but I've never been able to figure that out. We have an organ that's so disposable we can take it out and just throw it away, right? Talk about a defect in the evolutionary scheme. I mean, yeah, men ended up with nipples, right, but nipples aren't lethal, you know? Exploding nipple, very rare.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call and Waxwork on TNT.
That was sort of a subtle ending there, huh? If I hadn't been paying close attention, I definitely would have missed the cops standing outside the operating room there. And Geneviève didn't want to call them. But see how fast they responded? I guess Michael Douglas must have called him from his cell phone while he was climbing up that ladder and disconnecting the carbon monoxide. The Great Coma, directed by Uber author Michael Crichton. Okay, I want to remind you that next week we have the humorous side of John Carpenter, the brilliant and hilarious kung fu parody Big Trouble in Little China, followed by even more chopsaki in Circle of Iron. Be here with me, Joe Bob Briggs, next week. Now let us lower our heads in respect for our next movie. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what Monstervision is all about. It's the 1988 classic about 18 evil spirits from axe murderers to zombies who just need a few dimwit high school students to help bring them back to life and do nothing less than destroy the world. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking Waxwork. The story of an out-of-the-way wax museum in a residential neighborhood where if you get too close to the dummies, you get zapped into an alternate reality where Miles O'Keefe, John Rhys Davies, and various ghouls and sadists will rip your throat out. So let's do the drive-in totals and get it started. We have 43 dead bodies, no naked breasts, sorry. 1 live severed hand, African voodoo face painting, French S&M, fang sprouting, bat shooting, raw meat gobbling, sword fighting, strangling, stabbing, headbutting, axe to the back, death by fire, gratuitous dialogue with loud music over it, werewolf foo, vampire foo, mummy foo, zombie foo, senior citizen foo, 2 stars. Roll it. This is one of those nesty house movies. There are haunted house movies, and then there are nesty house movies. This is a nesty house. That was my grandma's favorite word. Don't put that in your mouth. It's nesty. Don't watch that TV show. It's a nesty show. My grandmother, you know. Don't go out with that girl. She's nesty. This is one of those cases where I agree with Grandma on this movie, though. But let's get nesty.